Okay, we are live. Yay! We're a little bit early, so we're just going to give people a minute or so to show up before we launch into things. This is kind of an odd time of the day, actually. I was thinking about it afterwards. You know, it's post lunch. And it's also middle of the high noon, high afternoon, all of that. So we'll see. We may be here by ourselves, but that's okay because we have a perpetual recording.
Yeah.
And people can enjoy it whenever they want. So I'm going to go ahead and just get started here. I'm really delighted to have you on, Fiona. For those of you who have not met Fiona Wong, she is a human design person, expert,
Goblin.
guide. Oh yes, human design goblin. I want to ask you about why you call yourself that, but let me get through with the formalities here. So Fiona is a 3/5 self-projected projector, and I discovered her, I don't know how, on some kind of a Google search, probably about Ra Uru Hu, because I'm always trying to get to the bottom of who was Ra Uru Hu. And I found a blog post that you did, Fiona, that was talking about how Ra Uru Hu, aka Robert Krakauer, which was his original name, culturally appropriated the I Ching, and it just drew me in. I said, "Oh my gosh, here's a heretic if there ever was one."
Yeah.
So, and I like the heretic's path. It's always good to. I have like I have part of me that's like always wanting to get back to what was really meant originally, and then let's pick that apart and see what's what. And when I started reading some of your posts, it's like, I've got to meet this woman. So I'm so glad that we've had a chance to talk, and we've had a meeting before, and I was actually so compelled by your work that I signed up for the guided voyage membership that you have, so that I could take a look at your Born Identity series and your take on the G Center. So one of the things that that I actually want viewers to know about my experience of you, Fiona, is I have an undefined G Center, and I'm periodically very, very aware of how I can go in so many different directions and assume so many different identities. And when I started to sort of orbit around you and your presence, even in the course that you have in the guided voyage membership, I could palpably feel the steadiness of your G Center. So that's why I really wanted to invite you on to kind of talk about some of your perspective around this center that holds the magnetic monopole, and what that means. But first, can I ask you, why do you call yourself the Human Design Goblin?
So I took a course earlier this year, and I thought I wanted to be a copywriter. I didn't really know what I wanted to do with my business. And I took a course called Mirror Brand by Sarah Ashman. And we had to introduce ourselves on this live Zoom call. And I was 110% intimidated. These were like big shot copywriters. There was this woman who like worked like with Disney, and there's just all of these people there, and they all had these really articulate introductions, and I didn't know what to say because I was just like, I have no idea. I'm in between businesses. So I just blurted out, "Hi, I'm Fiona. I'm just a swamp goblin. I don't know what I'm doing here." And everyone was just like, nobody batted an eye. Everyone was just like, "Hi, Fiona. Like, that's an interesting title. Like, we're happy to have you." And it kind of just stuck. They just kept referring me to a goblin, and people outside the course were referring it to me. Someone actually said, I was really interested in alter egos for a while after I read the book by Todd Herman. And someone had said that Fiona is actually the alter ego that protects the goblin. The goblin is actually who I was. And it really resonated. When we look at online business, we see a lot of people with, the flashy photo shoots and all of these things. We think that this is what we need in order to be successful. And a running joke between a lot of my business friends is Fiona just slaps things on a Google page and people give her money for it. It's the strangest thing. And I'm just like, yeah, I just want to be left alone. Here's my sales page. Give me money if you want to work with me. And that's about it. So I guess it's almost like a spirit animal. I don't know, a part of my identity. It's my G center. My G center is a goblin. And here we are.
That is so interesting. I've never really heard of anyone refer to themselves as a goblin, and I've definitely never met any other human design goblins. So,
Yeah, like everyone's an expert or a leader or an authority, and I'm kind of like, I don't resonate with any of these terms. I don't feel like a coach. All projectors are guides, so sure, I'm a guide, but honestly, I'm that goblin you heckle when you need something, but you don't know who to ask. When you want to smoke weed for the first time, you want to play with the Ouija board to contact your grandma, you want to do something really weird, you knock on the goblin's door. So that's who I am, that weirdo. You have that weird question, just ask me. People still message me sometimes because I used to label porn for a living back in my early 20s. Yeah, people still message me like, can you tell me how to break into that industry? I want to sell underwear online. How do I do that? Like, people still ask me these weird things, and it just, who else would you ask but that goblin in the little cave in the middle of the woods, right?
That is so funny. And I love, I just love how you had this, like, you just come from like this eclectic non-traditional in Western terms background,
Mm-hmm.
because your background is Chinese, you were
Yeah.
Buddhist, is that right? And
Yeah.
and so your perspective around human design has a lot to do with that, because you do know what's going on with the I Ching, and you do understand that from a very deep cultural perspective.
Yeah,
So
my mom was like every 3 months just dragged me to the astrologer in like in Chinatown in New York City, and it was just like everyone got their charts read. We wore our talismans, just super 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 religiously Buddhist spiritual type of background. And I actually like, I wasn't really into it back in the day. It was just something like I figured all Chinese people knew about this stuff, and I'm just like, why? Why do I have to wear this like jade tiger around my neck all year? It's uncomfortable. It hits me in gym class. And now that I'm older, it was just like, oh well, it's in my blood, and here we are.
And somehow that led you into human design, or how did that happen?
I feel like the spiritual world, in astrology speak, I have about 6 planets in Capricorn in the 8th house. So I feel like I'm a very practical, mundane, down to earth person. I'm one of those people, like, if you tell me you saw a spirit, I'm going to be like, well, what did your therapist say first of all before we dive into the spiritual? I'm very not into all that woo stuff. And I feel like it stalks me everywhere I go. And I feel like this is my most effective language. My first business was in tarot, didn't go very well. I was like, I don't want to do this anymore. I literally took a whole course. I paid several $1,000s for Mirror Brand to learn how to sell myself as a copywriter. And I came out as a human design reader. So it kind of stalks me. But I found human design because one of my virtual assistance clients, we were not getting along. She was a manifester. And we were just all the time butting heads. And she said, we need to get our charts read. And we got our charts read by a human design reader. And she told me I was a projector. And I spat on it. I was like, what do you mean I have to wait for an invitation? What do you mean I don't make my own energy and I'm tired? I'm a type A. I used to be a Marine. I'm a type A personality. Are you kidding me? I poo-pooed all over it. My incarnation cross is the vessel of love. And I was like, this is the cheesiest, corniest thing I have ever experienced. I hated it. But I found Pilar Lesko. Think pilarlesko.com. If you like Plutonian energy, that's her. And I read her book, Projector Magic. And I sat with it. I digested it. And when I actually dove into the human design charts, I was like, oh, this is just astrology. There's I Ching right here and, whatever. And it just kind of made sense when I read the charts. And when I was in Mirror Brand, they were like, oh, can you read my chart? And I was like, yeah, sure. And then they just kept inviting me to start a business in human design. Like, why are you trying to be a copywriter? This is your calling. This is what you're good at. And I'm just like, no, who pays money for this? Nobody pays money for this. And I jokingly kind of like put a couple of ads on my Facebook, on my personal Facebook. I was just like, well, if you want a human design reading, I just threw like a random number out there. I was like, it's $127. Here's a link. And I was so booked out that I had to like close it down. I think I made like 25 sales that first month. And I was like, okay, well, I see what this whole waiting for an invitation thing means. And it makes sense.
Yeah. And your G center is defined through the channel of inspiration, the 8-1. So we were talking before we got on the line about you mentioned that you really thought that you were a manifester. Because of that. Do you want to talk a little bit about that? And also, before you do that, I want to welcome those of you who are watching. And if you have any questions about the G Center, or if you want to tell us, is your G Center defined or undefined? We'd love to know in the comments. So go ahead and feel free to jump in on the conversation. But yeah, so I want to know, I want to know what made you think that you were a manifestor versus a projector, or what in the in your energy experience pointed to that initially, and then what changed your mind, or what changed your experience?
So when I read the manifestor type, I was like, why can't I be that? That's so cool. You get to initiate, you get to do all these things. You literally manifest reality for the rest of the world. And I was totally envious of the type. But when I started experimenting with my human design, I felt like I could speak my will into existence. And what makes a manifestor? You're a manifestor because you have that, what is it? Is it a motor center or energy, some sort of energy center that's connected to your
throat
center? It's usually the solar plexus, the ego center.
Yeah, or
the splenic.
I don't have the chart in front of me. The root, not the spleen, not the spleen.
Oh, it's not the splenic.
Or not the sacral.
Nope, definitely not that one.
So the will center, the emotional solar plexus, or the root. And if I missed one, you guys let me know. But I think those are the three major motors. So other than the sacral,
you have that connection. Let's say you have the heart center connected to the throat center, and what makes a manifestor? It's the energy moving around your body, and it gets alchemized in your throat center, because the throat center can't do anything without that power. It's like trying to drive a car without starting the engine. So when it gets powered up, you can speak into existence. That's a manifestor's power. So for me, everyone always compliments me on the way I speak, on the way I talk, how I communicate. And I always was like, why am I not a manifestor? It just doesn't make sense to me. But I have nothing defined in my chart except my G center, my throat center, and then that connection. So my throat center is powered by my identity, but it doesn't make you a manifestor. It makes you a self-projected projector. But everything I say comes from my identity. And I very much feel like when I want something, I can speak it to existence. But here's the caveat. it has to be an extension of who I am. It's almost as if I'm designed to be selfish. I think it was, I'm not sure if it was Alan Krakauer or Richard Rudd that said this, but people who have that defined G center are naturally narcissistic because we are constantly in search of ourselves, and everything we do in this world is a reflection of our identity, of who we are. So it feels very much like I'm a manifester, but when I try to just inform and tell people, hey, I'm doing this thing, not only do I crash and burn, it takes me months or years to recover. And I've seen that as a pattern for projectors. We don't just bounce back overnight the way our generator friends and our manifestor friends do. And for me, when I wait for that invitation, when I wait for other people to tell me, like, you should do this, you should do that, and then I talk about it and I start telling people, okay, I'm gonna do this, I'm gonna do that. When I do that informing thing that manifestors do, then the world kind of opens up for me. But without that recognition piece, nothing happens. And manifestors don't need that. That's where that major difference is. You can talk all day, you can be the most influential speaker or most charismatic speaker, the way manifestors are, but as a projector, without that recognition, everything you're kind of just talking to a wall.
Yeah, that is so the key right there,
Mm-hmm.
and I think that's kind of where projectors sort of get hitched up a little bit, because it's the recognition or the invitation or whatever, when people get you
Yeah.
and they're offering you their energy to pull that out of you, even as someone with an undefined G, it's the thing that sort of, it turns the whole system on. And
Mm-hmm.
a lot of times projectors get caught up in waiting for the next invitation and waiting for the next invitation from the same people, but you're already turned on, and
Yeah.
and you have the energy there, your access to go. So I'm so glad you made that point. A couple of people have come on. Lorna
Yeah.
has come on. She says, "Oh my goodness, I call my egoic mind George the Goblin."
I love it.
And thanks for your lovely intro, Fiona. And Mike is here. Hi, Mike, and he's saying that he's an 8-1 also.
Represent.
And yeah, and I put this up. I want to put it up again. Confused by uh, human design still. So it's been a while. Sure, you said I'm self-projecting projector. Oh, she's telling me that
Yeah.
I need to pop off. I'll come back. Okay. All right. Well, okay, come back, Lorna, when you can. Yeah, so we can talk a little bit more about what it's like to be a 3-5 self-projected projector, if you want, or where do you feel like you're the one with the direction here? So,
Yeah.
so what do you feel like people need to know about the G Center? Um,
Yeah. I definitely think I do want to talk about the self-projected projector, because if you Google it, people lump it in with the ego projected. It's not the same thing. If we had an ego projection, we'd be more of a manifester. But that's neither here nor there. And there's just not a lot of information out there, so I do want to talk about that. I also want to tell my child to turn the TV down really
okay.
quickly.
I love the spontaneity of being here live and real. So if you just hopped on and you have questions about your defined or undefined G Center, or comments, please feel free to put them in the comments, and we'll include you in the conversation. All
Yeah,
right.
doing calls because we're still in pandemic season. So my kids are distance learning. So like even business had to completely shift because there's no more childcare. There's none of that. So it's like, okay, well, we're gonna try to do this with kids in the house. So being a self-projected projector, get very comfortable with rambling. I call it the word vomit, where you kind of I almost want to imagine like you've probably seen this on TV shows or cartoons where you're just pulling something out of your mouth, right? There's a string and you're pulling it and you're pulling it and you're pulling it, and you don't really know where it's going to end. So that is pretty much what it feels like to be a self-projected projector, because you're pulling and you're pulling, you're talking and you're talking, and then all of a sudden it's like pop and it comes out. And that's where the conclusion is. That is where the decision is. Pilar's name is spelled Pilar, and her last name is Lesko, Lesko. I think that's how you spell it.
Yeah, and she was actually on. I had her on in the spring, so there's
Oh.
a video somewhere around here with her talking about projectors in business. She's very, very powerful.
Mm-hmm.
I've been activated. I sent her an email a while back. I said, I think I've been activated from afar because of a lot of the rethinking I've done in my own business over this past year, the reconsideration and breaking down of a lot of things. So yes, get into her
Definitely.
energy stream there. So go on about the pulling out, and then pop.
And that's it. That's your answer. And you really don't know how long it's going to take. When I first started experimenting with this, and I realized why I'm so annoying to my friends, because when you're self-projected, you don't actually want advice. You just want something to talk at. So I will literally send my friends these 20-minute long voice memos. I'm the worst. 20-minute long voice memos, and they will take the time to listen, and then they'll like tell me advice, and I'm just like, no, I'm good now. I don't need your advice. I have paid coaches like hundreds of dollars for coaching only to give myself the answer in session, but a good coach will help you do that anyway. And my partner, who's a manifesting generator, he now understands what it means to be self-projected. So I'll be like, I have to do my self-projected thing. And he will put down his video game controller. He'll get really comfortable because we might be here for a while. And he'll just let me ramble for like half an hour, knowing that I'm most likely not to listen to his advice or anything. It just rambles. And for me, I know when I'm getting close because I can hear it in my voice. I get louder. It gets clearer. I stop stuttering. I stop slurring my words. It's just this clear conclusion that just comes out of my mouth. And if it's like a big decision, such as like I'm trying to get out of this apartment and move, something like that might take me several weeks or even months to get to a conclusion with. But for something, I recently bought something called Thrive Cart for my business, and it's $700. And I was like, that is a huge investment. My partner and I probably went back and forth for like 2 days, I think. And he actually said to me, he was like, you light up every time you talk about it. And I was actually not listening to my own authority. My authority was screaming yes. The self-projectedness just kept spilling out of me, saying yes, yes, yes. But what's up here, which is, what we're trying not to do, right? What's up here was like, well, logically, it's $700, a lot of money. That's almost our rent. Da, 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 da. Like, there's just so much going on up here that he actually told me, listen to yourself. Your words are, your voice is saying yes, but your words are saying but. So that's kind of how it works to be self-projected.
So that was a really strong distinction that your partner made between the words and the voice, like the quality of the sound of the words and the tone of your voice. And yeah, not having a defined G center, not being a self-projected projector. I can only tell you what I've observed and what I've read, and from the textbooks, it's all about that shift in the tone of your voice. So, and I love that analogy. You just pull it out, pop.
Yep. It's kind of a gross visual, but you'll remember it.
Well, what I find really interesting, you say that it's kind of like you do the verbal vomit or whatever it is, it's coming out. But when you actually, like, when I went through your Born Identity course, I was so impressed with how clear, and I know this isn't the first time you've heard it, but how clearly you express yourself. And that's not my experience at all. A splenic projector, undefined throat center, and I have to talk around things because I have the 6447 channel and it's all up here just sort of circulating around in abstract. And, and eventually I do come out with a nugget. But that's very different. That experience that I have is very different from what you're talking about with the verbal vomit or whatever.
Oh no, I think I lagged out. Can you guys still hear me in the chat? Can you let me know?
You want to call? I can't hear my. Okay, I think we're back.
We're back. Okay.
I don't think they ever lost you on the screen.
Oh, okay.
Cool. Yeah, but it's such a different, even though you say you do have to kind of talk and talk and talk to get it out, but it seems to me like, and I haven't been in those places with you where you're actually talking to make a decision, but it seems to me like your talking to get it out is way more coherent than those of us who maybe have the undefined throat center and the undefined G center. So
maybe. I also have maybe you guys can, but I actually have like whiteboards. This is my whole membership planning out. I actually have whiteboards all over my apartment because sometimes the coherent stuff comes out, but I wasn't ready for it, and it's just like, bleh. Oh God, what do I do with this? What do I do with this? And I'm just like, whiteboard, dump it on there. And most of my content that you see is just me walking around my apartment, like, I said this, I said this, I said this, I said this. And then I just put it together nicely. So that's how you get the end result.
That you just pull it off the boards and then you string it together.
Random phrase here: every projector is raw, untapped talent waiting to be discovered. I don't remember when I said this, but it's just there. And I'm like, I'm gonna use this for something eventually, but I don't know, it just fell out of my mouth and there it is.
Wow. That is so amazing. Like sometimes does it just come out? I mean, and that speaks to your 8-1 channel, that individual circuitry, and it just, the mutation, the expression of the mutation. But does it just sometimes come out and you just don't know where it came from? Like
I think I never really know where things come from because I'm so undefined everywhere else in my chart. And even when I do a human design reading, it feels like because when you sit with me, I'm conditioning you. My 8-1 conditions you. It feels like instead of pulling it from my mouth, now I'm pulling it out of your mouth. I'm like, tell me. And then we mostly only pause when they have a question. You're like, oh, well, what's that thingamabob on my chart? I'll tell them. And then my clients it just keeps coming out of their mouth. Human design's great.
Wow. Yeah. And I know that with that 8-1, you're very, very empowering when you sit there and you're that presence for people. So It's so cool.
I actually listened to Halsey's new CD. I did Halsey's human design chart. It's in my blog somewhere. And she actually also has that 8-1. And the interesting about G centers is we're supposedly really, you know how they say opposites attract, but for people who have defined G centers, that could be further from the truth. We are actually attracted to the similar. So when I realized like how much I loved her music, and I used to tell my partner, I was like, I feel like she's singing about my life. Like there's just so many parallels in what we've gone through and our experiences. And I was like, I have to pull her chart. And I was like, there it is. There's the 8-1. That's why I feel so connected to her because it was with you as an undefined G center, you're more so attracted to who you would be okay being conditioned by. Whereas with us, when we have defined G centers, we look at our chart, we're like, oh, I recognize, like we're like similar, we're like the same. So we want to be around our people. And I think that's so interesting about
really. Interesting. I hadn't thought about it that way.
Yeah.
Um, yeah, well, not having a defined G center, I don't have that experience. I'd love
Mhm.
to know what some of you think who do have the defined G center, or how you experience it as well. Are you attracted to other people who are like G'd, or how do we put that? Like G'd, or is it a different experience for you? Um, yeah, I know that there, for me, for me having an undefined G center, you're right. It's like if I'm in the presence of someone who is conditioning my G in a way where I feel like I'm going to be locked in,
Mhm.
it's not good at all.
Yeah.
It's not, and I guess one of the examples I can give is like back in between marriages, I was dipping my toe into online dating, and there was a guy that I was sort of talking to, and I'm so glad that we never really got together, because I
Mhm.
just knew that he was going to try to do my spirituality for me. Like,
Ooh.
and I after I got deeper into human design, I kind of looked up his birthday, and it's like, yep, there's the defined G center. He's gonna, and it was like, oh gosh, I'm glad I didn't get into that, because I would have been locked in and not really able to express my own direction there, or the direction that would be best for me. So cool.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, yeah, so where do we want to go from here? I've got a few notes here about things, but what's on the top of your?
I actually want to touch upon that, what you just said really quick. Richard Rudd did this really cool. I actually prefer Richard Rudd's material to Alan Krakauer's. I'm just going to throw that out there. I'm going to reference him a lot. He actually did this comparison chart when it comes to people with undefined G centers. I'm really interested in the undefined G center because I'm actually really interested in people who are very opposite of me from like an informational perspective. And he was saying that you could be in a relationship as a defined G with someone with an undefined G, and then that person goes and hangs out with a friend, right, who has also a defined G center. And when they say like, "Oh, I don't like you when you're with that person," like, I don't like you. The person with the undefined G will often not even realize that they're being conditioned or that they're changing, because it's like, you're one person when you're with your partner and you feel good about that. You like that side of you. But then you accept that you're a different person with someone else, but you also like that side of you. And what happens then? You have your defined G friends are like, "Oh, you're being fake. You're so flaky. You change your identity all the time, blah, blah, blah." So undefined G centers, if you're listening, that's completely normal. It's completely normal
It
for you
is.
to shift and be a chameleon depending on your environment. And when us defined Gs yell at you because we're narcissistic and we want you to just be a reflection of us, pay us no mind. We're just mad for the sake of being mad.
Well, I know that, you live in North Carolina, I live in Tennessee. You're well aware
Mm,
of the Bible Belt here,
yeah,
and I it's really funny to me how I can go and um, fit in with the Bible Belt crowd,
yeah,
you know and then I can flow over to my friend who's like ex-army, and I find myself swearing a lot more than I would, or
yeah.
and it's like, oh my gosh, if the Bible Belt crowd could see me over here with this friend over here swearing like a sailor.
No, that's super interesting because like I live in the Bible Belt, but I force everyone around me to accept me as I am. And even when I was in the military, people used to knock on my door and be like, "Fiona, can you read my palm? Can you can you flip those little cards and tell me if my girlfriend's cheating on me?" Like no matter where I went, there was just this constantness that I'm just that weird goblin kid that has cards and will read your palm and like just ask me all your weird questions. And everywhere I go, it's that way. And I've gone to church. I'm just like my partner's a Catholic school teacher,
Oh
and I'll
wow.
just like show up with my this shirt, my goth and emo stuff, And it's just like, hello, here I am. I'm here to bask in your presence and learn about your religion and all of that. But I inherently don't change. It's, I can, wherever I go, it's like I almost force everyone else to just take me as I am. And what I noticed that when I did try to be different, my ex-husband's actually like a super redneck. Like he would be very happy that I said that on this stream. He'd be like, "Yes, I am, dag
I'm
nabbit.
proud of
Yeah,
it.
I love my guns. I love my truck. I love beer. Everything about a country song, he embodies. He very proud of it." And I when I was married to him, I tried very hard. I'm from New York City. I tried to be that like sweet girl that like baked. I mean, I bake cookies, but I'm not gonna wake you up with like, here's fresh cookies, sweet tea, and all of this. And I tried. I really tried. And you know what happened? Everyone hated me. Everyone was just like, she's fake. I don't like her. There's just something off about her. Her aura is just bad. She's bad juju. And I hated myself. I was at my lowest self-esteem, and I hated. I used to wear this blue peacock dress, and now that I look back, I'm like, why did I do that? That is not my style. And I tried so hard to just bury my own G center and just be like, nope, 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 nope. So when you have that defined G center and you ignore it, or you hear what everyone tells you, when you hear advertisements, your family, even your partner, your friends, when everyone tells you who you should be, and you accept that and you allow that conditioning instead of letting your G center forward, it can actually backfire on you. So when you try to live like an undefined G and you're a defined G, that not self will show up.
Can you just talk a little bit more about what that feels like? Like when I tell clients who have a defined G center that there may be, they can never hide who they are, but they can never shape shift or shift into a different expression of who they are. It's more like they put a lid or a basket over their identity. What is that like inside your body when you try to do that?
It feels like what I normally tell my clients is, if you bury that G center, eventually just prepare for a rebellion. And that rebellion, oh man, when I went through mine, straight up Mulan'd my hair. um I I like tore down all my old businesses. I don't know. I did a bunch of stuff. I got like a bunch of tattoos. I joined a cult for a little
Oh
bit.
gosh.
I was just like, and then you go. It's like the Tower card in tarot. It's like you go through this period of everything just shuts down because you Hulk out. It's like, all of this is not me. And then what
Wow.
happens? What happens when a snake or like any sort of like animal really sheds its skin? It becomes vulnerable. Like a hermit crab shedding a shell. Now you're vulnerable. Now you're raw. And now what happens? Now you're grasping at just anything else to cover yourself back up, and then you get trapped in this cycle of looking for just anyone to tell you who you are, when it's really here. It's in that G center. That's all it is. And the not self is definitely going to rear its head. I felt nothing. I was the embodiment of a bitter person as a projector. As a manifestor, maybe you just rage at everyone. Generators, you're frustrated all the time. And no, poor reflectors, you guys just hate everything. You're disappointed in everything. So that's how it feels.
Yeah, yeah. Wow. Wow, I love that imagery, I love that, the ripping out, the hulking out, and then being very vulnerable after that.
Yeah.
Wow.
What happens when you scream at all your friends? Now you have nobody to talk to, right? So that vulnerability, it always comes, but you can see it as an opportunity to be like, okay, let's do some self-reflection. Let's see what's going on. Let's call up Sandy and be like, I need a reading, but let's just do the G center, right? Or you just end up trapped in that cycle of grasping at anything to figure out who you are.
Yeah. Yeah. Wow. And that's really part of the process, because you
Mhm.
can't you'll implode if you keep a lid on yourself for too
Yep.
long. So Meredith asks, can you let me I just found this little show thing, so
Mhm.
I'm playing with it. Can you talk about the 1333 channel? Is it similar to the 81 channel? Should I avoid giving that friend advice or just let them talk it out? Do you want to kind of talk to this, and I'll add whatever if it needs to, or
Oh yeah, so I actually love all the I love all the G Center gates and channels. So that one, it's how do you pronounce it? The
the prodigal? Uh-huh.
prodigal,
Hmm.
right? So that one's like it's being about it's being a witness. That's what it's about. So the 8-1, it's about inspiration, right? You are inspiring other people. Your whole existence, the fact that you're still alive, the fact that you're doing whatever it is you're doing, inspires people, right? Whereas the channel of the witness is actually a little bit different. It's about recalling what you're seeing. It's about your identity. I've sat here and I've observed this video with Sandy, and I've had this experience, and now you're recalling that through that your throat center. So first of all, it's through your perspective, your G center, right? The energy works through your G center, your perspective, out of your mouth in the throat center. You've witnessed it, but you're recalling it through your lens. So I hope that kind of shows the difference between the two of them.
Yeah. Yeah. And I would say, it's the same if they're self-projected projector, Meredith, it's the same kind of a thing. They just need to pull it out, pull it out, pull it out, pull it out until it pops. But what you're probably going to hear coming out of their mouth is that the past that they're witnessing through their voice.
Yeah.
So, yeah. Well, it's good. Thank you for asking that on behalf of how to be a better friend. Great question.
Yeah.
Um,
And I think what's important about someone with that channel too is, how when someone tells a story, we often try to believe there is one singular truth and that's it. I would avoid trying to shape their perspective of how something happened, because it is how they witnessed it. It is their truth. So I would instead, really, with anyone who's self-projected, just ask them like, so do you want my advice or do you want me to just listen? I think that's always a great way, because that way you can conserve your energy if they
mhm.
don't want advice. But if they do want advice, you're not just sitting there thinking, well, they're self-projected, they don't need my advice.
Yeah, and I think that's a great courtesy question anyway for
Yeah.
anyone who really needs to talk things out. Most of us projectors do need to talk something out at some point. And sometimes some of us need advice, and some of us just need to hear ourselves
Yeah.
for whatever reason, depending on our authority. Um, Yeah, she says that actually fits very well. Human design is quite beautiful. And welcome, Alexandra. Alexandra is a 3-5 splenic
We got all the
projector.
3 5s today.
Oh, can you say something about having a totally open, here, I'll put it up here. Can
Yeah.
you say something about having a totally open G center? And she just jumped on a minute ago. So you want to start and I'll finish
Yeah.
up or
So I had the joy of working with several people who had a completely open G center. Two of them were in their 20s, and five of them were actually past the age of 65, so 65 to 80 years old. And what I've noticed is the ones that were in their 20s, they were very much like, I don't know what the hell I'm supposed to do with my life. Or they feel like I'm very multi-passionate, I'm trying to do all of these things, or their identity is usually tied to I'm a wife, I'm an accountant, I'm a mom, I'm this, I'm that. It's their identity becomes tied to what they do for other people instead of who they are, and that gets complicated, because who wants to be an extension of another human being? We don't want to be a side character in someone's story. And I find that people who haven't hit that first Saturn return, which happens when you're about 30 years old, they tend to struggle with that, or they get very easily kind of morphed by the people around them. What I noticed about my clients who were past age 65 was they went through a big cycle of, I like some of them had multiple marriages, different jobs, didn't ever really know what they wanted with their lives. But they all told me this, which I found very interesting, that now they know who they are, but there's no word to describe it, that they just feel it. that they have an understanding of who they are. And it's more of they can go around and be like, yes, that's something that I have an affinity for, or I relate to that, or I enjoy that. It almost transcends language. It's just more of an embodiment that you feel. So I have a defined G that I'm just relaying what I've experienced with clients. But, Sandy?
Yeah, well, I have an undefined G, so it's a little bit different from a totally open G, but I can tell you from working with clients with a totally open G center that my experience is similar. That if you're before your Saturn return, there's, I don't know what I want to do. I don't. And then after you get about age 50, after your Chiron return around age 50, it's usually people with an open G, if they're not overly identified or overly conditioned to take on like the identity of another person, the Mrs. whoever they're married to or whatever. It's the same kind of a thing. They know who they are, but there aren't any words for it. And a lot of times they can also sometimes struggle with that multi-passionate piece, and for some, it's the changing their environment really changes their whole life. It's because they're filtering other people's gates off the G center, and they're having a different experience of their direction. And sometimes it's, about retiring from that job and moving to, downsizing and moving to a smaller home in a different geographical location. And it gives them an entirely different experience of themselves and their identity and their direction in life. And it's so fluid. It's so there's no specific gate that they're filtering it through or anything. It's just, it can change with the wind. It can change with the people who walk through the room.
It's like smoke. You can't hold on to it, but it's still there, even if it's not something you can grab and force to.
Yeah. And Alexandra, I'd love to know if you've got the totally open G center, how that relates to maybe your struggles with career path and stuff like that. I've worked with a client in the past with an open G center who finally came to the conclusion that she had really no set purpose in her life, or that's how it felt to her, like no set, like nothing really driving her in terms of I've got to experience this, or I have to express this thing in my life. It was really just very, very fluid for her. So if you have any insight from your own experience, love to hear it.
Also, there's a book called The Renaissance Soul. That's about I love that book about being multi-passionate and stuff. I recommend that to a lot of people who, whether or not they have a defined or undefined G, if they identify as being multi-passionate, I think that's a great book.
Yeah, I have a friend who does she's a projector. I think she's a splenic projector. I have to check her G center again, see if it's totally open. But she does coaching with the Renaissance Soul material. So very interesting.
Yeah. You know who actually has a completely, I'm going to double check really quickly to make sure I'm right about this, but I'm pretty sure Nicki Minaj. Yeah, I'm just going to share my screen. Okay. Yeah, I'm going to share really quick just so you guys can see what I'm looking at. But this is Nicki Minaj's chart.
Here, let me put it up. There we go.
Yeah, and you'll notice she completely open head center, completely open G center, completely open
will center.
The ego. Yeah, just like ego, heart. There's just so many names for this.
Wow, look at that. So nothing to prove, fluid direction, fluid identity.
Yeah.
Here to be inspired in a multitude of different ways. Wow.
Yeah. And if you've ever followed her her work, Nicki Minaj has especially when she first arrived in like the early 2010s, right? Or maybe 2000s, she had these alter egos. I remember there was one CD where she just took on these different voices and these different personas and personalities, and she became known for it. She became known for all of these different personas that she plays. And it's like, which Nicki Minaj are we getting today? It's just like she dresses up all these different things, pastel wigs, and what is so interesting about that is how influential she is even today, how she has sustained her career. It is difficult to be a musician. A lot of them end up, one album, two album, forgotten about. Nicki Minaj, she's still coming out with new stuff. And
Yeah.
even with that, completely open G center. So, you could literally leave behind a legacy of being so many different things and trying
Yeah.
so many different things. You don't have to have that just one thing that's old world. You can be whatever the hell you want to be. New world.
Yeah, and fluidity, it can be a superpower.
Yeah.
So that is such a great example. Thank you for sharing that.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm looking at the time. We're at about 50 minutes here.
Mm-hmm.
And I just want to let people know that you do have the guided voyage membership, which is very, very reasonable. And if you want to know more about the G Center, whether you're defined or undefined or self-projected, projector, all of that is in the Born Identity series that's in Fiona's guided voyage membership. So I think I put a link. I
think
think
you did. I saw it. It's a
yeah. So
bit.ly link, so look for
yeah,
that.
yeah, it's really well done. Very, very well done. So and I've been studying the G Center for a long time, so I could definitely highly recommend it. Very, very easy to understand, very articulate, very organized, and yeah, and rich with information. So awesome. Is there anything else you want to add, or anything?
Honestly, I think human design is for everyone, projector or not, G center, defined or not. Remember that human design is about your journey as a human being. There really is no right way, wrong way, just because even the text, the human design text, look at how many variations of the Bible we have, and how many variations of all these philosophy texts we have, how many people have translated them. What we have now, human design's only been around since the 80s. We only have 3, 4, 5 maybe people's texts and translations of human design really circulating. So don't be afraid to have your own relationship to it. You never walk up to someone in church and be like, unless you're repeating what the pastor says, you're wrong. You're allowed to have your own relationship with human design. And, if you hear something today and you're like, I really don't resonate with that, it's okay, because however you live in your design is really personal and intimate with, who you are. And you get to say, like, for me, I was just like, screw invitations for like, I actually tried to bypass it. I told all my friends, I was like, make sure you verbally invite me to everything, because that's how I'm designed. I wanted to find all of these loopholes, all of these tricks. And you can experiment with things like that. You could do embarrassing things. You could do things that really go against human design, because at the end of the day, even Alan Krakauer himself said, don't believe me, just try it, see what happens. And if you're a 3-5, the pot is hot because you touched it. You know that it hurts to fall down because you threw yourself down. So
yeah,
have fun with it.
For those of you who are wondering who Alan Krakauer is, that was Ra-Uru-Hu's original name. And if you want to know why Fiona calls him by his original name, you can go to her website at thewildpixel.com and read her blog. So there's all kinds of information about her perspective on this. And I just want to add to what you said about the human design is really yours. Your body graph is yours, and the foundation. Even though we're having the heretics conversation here, this really is the foundational piece of human design. You take this information and you experiment with it. You see, you do the embarrassing things if that's what you need to do, or you do the things that give you data as to who you're not, if that's what you feel like you need to do. So, highly recommend your site. Yep. And you do, and it's all theory until it's lived. So go out and really live it.
Yeah, and I think a lot of purists often forget that last piece. That one of the first things in his textbooks was, "Don't believe me, just try it," and also that this is not supposed to be a religion. This is not supposed to be another thing that you follow like a sheep. And in his words, he said, "This is not supposed to be something that's supposed to use you and abuse you and then throw you away." So
Mhm.
it doesn't matter who says what, or if you got a reading and you hated it, even if it's from me, like it's this is your chart, this is yours,
Yeah.
and no one can take this from you.
Mhm. Yeah. Yeah. And I want to acknowledge Alexandra. She said, in relation to our conversation about the OpenG, yes, thank you so much. I'm in my 20s. I change course depending on who I am, who I'm with, or where I'm at. If I'm alone in my own space, I feel no set direction or sense of purpose pulling at me. Great. Thank you for sharing that, Alexandra. And I can't pronounce this person's name that recognizes your site.
Landstar, there we
They're,
go.
they're, they're a 3/6 splenic projector here, and I guess you know them. So.
Maybe. And since there's a lot of projectors here, just remember, we don't need to do anything. As I was saying, that maybe that's what this quote is for. Maybe it's for today. Like, every projector is raw, untapped talent waiting to be discovered. As projectors, you were born perfect, and I will say that with utmost confidence. You were born perfect. It's just we're most of us are fish trying to climb a tree. We're trying to do things like manifestors and generators, and we're just not. And we
We don't,
don't have to do things.
that's
Yeah,
exactly what I was going to say. We
yeah,
don't have to.
yeah,
The reason we're designed the way we're designed as projectors is because we don't have to do those things
yep.
to have the life that we're really here to have, that really suits us.
Yeah,
So,
if you're alone in your own space, you just want to take a nap and binge watch Bob's Burgers, which I did 2 hours ago, by all means, that's within your human design. You don't have to do things. You don't have to, I don't know, do all your chores and take out the trash. I mean, maybe
yeah.
eventually, but you don't have to do things to validate your existence.
Exactly. Exactly. That's a great note to end on.
Yeah.
That's worth the price of admission right there. So, so I want to thank you all for being here and being part of this conversation. And I want to thank you, Fiona, for being willing to come on and have this conversation with us. And all of her information, or the information about the Guided Voyage membership, is somewhere in the description. You can go check it out. And I think I put your website there too, thewildpixel.com. If I didn't, I will. And
Thank you.
yeah, so, and if you like these kinds of things and you're not subscribed to my channel, you're invited to subscribe. Share this video with anyone you think may benefit, and like it as well if you like it. Thank you so much, everyone, for being here. Have a good
Bye.
day.